Tributes from across the country poured in almost instantly, but even as the news spread, many people refused to believe it. Richard Smallwood, the 8-time Grammy-nominated gospel singer-composer and one of the most influential figures in gospel music history, had passed away at 77, after a lifetime of creating music that carried people through their darkest moments. He died quietly from complications related to kidney failure, leaving the gospel community in shock and mourning. His funeral and memorial service were held in early January 2026, celebrating the life and extraordinary legacy of the gospel icon. Musicians, pastors, choir directors, and everyday listeners all echoed the same sentiment. This loss felt personal. Richard Smallwood was not just someone whose music people admired. He was someone whose music people lived with. His songs were present in hospital rooms, at funerals, during national tragedies, and in moments of private prayer. When news of his passing broke, shock quickly turned into collective mourning. Social media transformed into a digital sanctuary. Videos of choirs singing total praise flooded timelines. Old concert clips resurfaced. Celebrities and fans alike shared stories of how his music helped them survive grief, heartbreak, and uncertainty. Gospel artists like Donnie McClurkin and even icons outside the gospel world, such as Shaka Khan, shared emotional tributes that revealed just how deeply Smallwood's influence reached. But why did his death hit so hard? Why did this moment feel heavier than the loss of so many other legendary artists? To understand that, you have to understand who Richard Smallwood truly was. Richard Smallwood was never just a gospel musician. He was a revolutionary force in worship music. Born in 1948 in Atlanta and raised in Washington, D.C., his musical journey began almost as soon as he could touch a piano. By the age of 5, he was already playing by ear. By 11, he had formed his first gospel group. Those early signs of genius only grew stronger with time. His upbringing in Southeast D.C., particularly his deep connection to Union Temple Baptist Church, shaped his musical soul. Hymns were not just songs to him, they were foundations. His stepfather was a pastor, and the church environment nurtured both his faith and his extraordinary talent. What set him apart, even as a child, was his ability to hear music differently, to feel harmonies and structures others couldn't yet grasp. That rare gift followed him to Howard University, where he received formal classical training. It was there that something remarkable happened. Smallwood didn't choose between classical music and gospel. He fused them. He blended complex classical arrangements with the emotional depth of gospel, creating a sound that had never truly existed before. It was refined, powerful, and deeply spiritual all at once. From that fusion came music that would change worship forever. Songs like Total Praise, Center of My Joy, I Love the Lord, Trust Me, and My Everything were not just hits. They became standards. They were sung in churches across denominations, at presidential inaugurations, during national crises, and at moments when words alone were not enough. Even people who didn't know his name knew his music. They felt it before they ever learned who created it. One of the most powerful aspects of Richard Smallwood's legacy was accessibility. As many who worked with him said, he pushed out music you could sing to, music you could hold on to when you were going through something, music that choirs could sing and congregations could feel. His words didn't stay on the page, they resonated within the soul. Yet behind that musical brilliance was a man who carried hidden struggles. Smallwood never married, and while his public life was filled with accolades, his private life included battles that many never knew about until later. He spoke openly about dealing with anxiety and depression from a young age, at a time when mental health was rarely discussed, especially in faith communities. He admitted that as a child, he didn't even understand what those troubling thoughts were. He just knew something felt heavy. That vulnerability made his music even more powerful. The depth people felt in his compositions wasn't accidental. It came from someone who understood pain, uncertainty, and the need for hope. His songs didn't pretend suffering didn't exist. They acknowledged it, then pointed listeners toward faith. Despite ongoing health challenges, including kidney issues that limited his public appearances in later years, Smallwood never stopped creating. He continued composing, mentoring, and inspiring from behind the scenes. His influence extended far beyond his own performances. Artists like Whitney Houston, Destiny's Child, Boys I Men, and many others recorded his songs, carrying his message into spaces he himself never chased. When news of his death was confirmed by his publicist, Bill Carpenter, the reaction was immediate. Shock turned into grief, and grief turned into reflection. Hashtags like RIP Richard Smallwood began trending as fans shared testimonies of how his music soundtracked their faith journeys. This wasn't just breaking news, it was a communal moment of loss. At memorial gatherings and tribute nights, emotions ran high. Gospel artist Donald Lawrence described Smallwood as a musical hero and a friend, someone whose devotion to worship allowed deep bonds to form. Others referred to him simply as the maestro, a title that fit not just his technical skill but his spiritual authority in music. One particularly moving tribute came from a conductor who had worked with him at the University of California, Berkeley. He recalled how Smallwood's guest appearance in 1990 didn't just elevate the choir musically, but touched everyone present. His kindness, humility, and unwavering faith left an indelible mark on every group he worked with, from college choirs to mass church choirs. As tributes continued, something unexpected began to happen. What started as heartbreak slowly transformed into celebration. Churches organized vigils. Choirs rehearsed his songs with renewed purpose. Young musicians began covering his work, posting performances online, ensuring that his sound would continue to echo. HBCUs like Howard University and Jackson State led formal tributes, honoring not just his music, but his role as an educator and pioneer. His passing sparked important conversations about preserving the legacies of gospel icons, about valuing them while they are still alive. The memorial service held in early January 2026 captured all of this emotion in one space. Celebrities were openly emotional. Donnie McClurkin wept as he shared stories of collaboration and friendship. Shaka Khan delivered a deeply moving performance, singing his music with a vulnerability that silenced the room. Even Stevie Wonder sent a video message, his voice cracking as he honored the songs that had shaped his own artistry. What stood out most during the service, however, was the humility reflected by Smallwood's family. They spoke not of fame but of faith, not of awards but of service. They thanked supporters and reminded everyone that Richard would want his life celebrated, not mourned in despair. And yet the absence was undeniable. Richard Smallwood's death created a void not just in gospel music, but in music as a whole. He was a bridge between generations, between classical precision and spiritual expression. His work reminded people that worship could be both intellectually rich and emotionally raw. In the days following his passing, fans around the world revisited his albums. Many shared stories of how Center of My Joy helped them through loss, how Total Praise became their anchor during crisis. Psychologists and faith leaders alike noted how communal grief, when shared through music, can become healing. In gospel tradition, figures like Smallwood are not just artists, they are beacons. Ultimately, Richard Smallwood's final goodbye was not closure. It was a continuation. His death fostered conversations about truth, vulnerability, unity, and faith. It reminded people to talk openly about mental health, to acknowledge pain without shame, and to lean into music as a source of strength. For fans of gospel music worldwide, the message underlying his passing is clear. Richard Smallwood lives on. He lives on in choirs lifting their voices, in quiet prayers whispered through his lyrics, in moments when someone needs hope and finds it in a familiar melody. The maestro has taken his rest, but his music, his faith, and his spirit will never be silent.